Does a federal tax lien take priority over a mortgage? Welcome back. Now, in this episode, I'm going to answer your question, does a federal tax lien take priority over a mortgage? You're actually going to like this lesson. It's hugely popular with other people. Once you learn it, it'll change the way you do things. Now, my name is Ted Thomas. For the last 30 years, I've been involved in tax lien certificates and tax defaulted properties. Before that, I was in regular real estate, but I changed over, and there's a lot of reasons why. I'll explain that a little later on as we talk. Now, the tax lien and deed business is a little bit the world of the weird, but it helps everybody once you learn how to do it. So first of all, the county is very happy if you buy at these auctions because they get the money they need to run the government. The people that do the buying, that you and I, we like it because we get properties for 60, 70, 80, sometimes even 90% discounts. And then, of course, it helps the community a lot. Now, how does it help the community? Well, it really helps the community because they don't have properties that are left abandoned in the countryside, and so everybody that's involved does quite well with this. So homeowners get involved with tax liens, so they do well. We do well because we make money. So it's a good business for all of us to be involved in. But today's question is, does a federal tax lien take a priority over a mortgage? So let's just talk about this for a second. Once you have this knowledge, you will have a competitive advantage. You're going to see in this lesson how our investor makes $100,000 while the rest of the people are just standing there not knowing what's going on. So it's a matter of knowing the rules. So this episode is going to help you determine which of the liens on a property, which of the liens has a priority. So there will be a definite priority: first lien, second lien, and third lien. And that's basically determined by date and time. So if you're making notes, write down date and time. This is tremendously important. Now, this is going to answer the question, does the federal tax lien take a priority over a mortgage? You're going to be very surprised. A lot of people know about the big acronym government agencies like the IRS and the Department of Defense and things like that. They know about these things, and they're very concerned with their loans. And so you should be too. So I'm going to give you the priority. Priority 1, priority 2, priority 3. Now, once you understand it, as I say, this will give you a competitive advantage, and you'll be able to do this for a long time. Now, how do I know all this? Well, I started out as an investor. I've been an investor for 30 years. Along the way, I got a lot of experience, and then people started asking me questions. I started answering them, so I helped people with answers. Then I became a coach, and then I started creating different ways for people like yourself to learn how to do this. So you're going to learn now how to establish the priority. Now, first I have to give you some fundamentals so that you understand the system. Otherwise, you'll learn it today and you'll forget it. But once you understand these fundamentals, you'll be able to remember this and be able to do it for the rest of your life. Now, of course, I brought along some notes. From time to time, I'll refer to the notes. But I want to show you how you're going to have a competitive advantage before we finish up here today. And I might have to refer to my notes, which is perfectly fine because I want to make sure that this is accurate. Okay, so when you own a property, you can do anything you want with that property. You could subdivide it into little properties. You could rent it out to other people. You could grow crops on it. You could run cattle on it. You can do anything you want with that property. However, there's one thing that you can't stop doing, and that is you can't stop paying taxes. So in this country, we have freedom of ownership on property. However, if you do not pay your property tax, the treasurer is authorized by the state, the legislature, to do something about that. So the treasurer can levy the tax, treasurer can collect tax. If they can't collect it, they can confiscate your property. So put that in the back of your mind. You always have to have the property taxes paid. If not, the treasurer understands that you are forfeiting the property to the treasurer. Now, you don't want to do that, and you don't want your client to do that. But watch what happens. What you're actually looking for is you want to find out what the first lien is, what the second lien is, and what the third lien. So years ago, through land grants, they gave away 120 acres at a time. Most people, they only wanted about 40 acres. That's all they could handle. So let's say we have a 40-acre plot. So we start out with a federal government, that's a republic. The next thing they do is they authorize states. And the states authorize the counties. Now, when the county's authorized, the surveyors show up and they measure the county. And they measure all the plots of land all the way down to 40 acres. All right. So the government could give away 40 acres if they owned it, and they owned it all. So they gave it away. They gave it away 120 acres at a time. All right, so we're just going to talk about the 40 acres because it's reasonable for us to think about that. So the surveyors have surveyed this land, and now they make a map of it. So that's just a regular plat map, and you can find one of those at the county. Now, when they make that map, what they do is they put a number on the bottom of it. Now, sometimes that's called a folio number. Sometimes it's called an assessor's parcel number. But here's what I can assure you. There might be 5 or 6 names for it, but it's a tax number. It's like you have a social security number. Every property has a tax. Now, that tax is now the first tax because it was the first time it became a property. So when they measured it, they put a number on it. All right, at that point in time, that's the tax number. No number can get in front of it. Nobody can get in front of it because we went from the land to that number. Now, if you owned a property and you paid the tax on that land, nobody can get in front of you then either because as soon as you pay it, instantly they put a tax back on it for the next year. So that tax will always be there. Nobody can get in front of it. It was formed 200 years ago if it was one of the original states and one of the colonies. All right, so it's been around for a long time. So when the government kept giving land grants to more and more as they moved west, more and more plots of land, more and more numbers. Now, who keeps track of those numbers? Those numbers are kept at the county records. Those are the official records. So that plot that they put on a piece of paper with a number, they take that over and they record it. First to record is first in time. First to record is first in time. Also, it's the first lien. So when they recorded that particular number, when they made that plot of land, that is the absolute first lien. Nothing can get in front of the first lien. All right, now, the question I'm answering today is, does a federal tax lien take priority over a mortgage? Well, we haven't even got to the mortgage yet, so you know the federal lien can't get in front of this tax lien. So that'll give you a hint as to where we're going on. So every property has a number. It's filed at the official county records by date and time. Date and time is all you have to remember because the first date was way back in the 18 and 1900s, okay? Now, if anyone purchases a property, what they will do, even if the government gave them the property, it has a number. So now they have to start paying taxes based on that number. They own that property, even if the government gave it to them. All right, now, they're going to have to pay taxes on that land. Everybody has to pay taxes. Now, if they get the land, what are they going to do? Well, maybe they're going to grow some crops. Well, if they grow some crops, they're probably going to want to have a house to live in, and maybe they need a barn. So how are they going to do that? Well, they would go to a bank. So a bank would lend on that. Sometimes it's lenders, sometimes friends, whatever. They're going to get a lien or a loan on that property. When they get a loan, the lender is going to say, well, wait a minute. If you don't pay me, what do I get? And you'll say, well, if you don't pay me, I tell you what, I'll give you the property. All right, so that's the security for the loan. All right, now that loan might be 20 years after you own the property. So it's now going to be recorded at the local public records. So they're going to say it's filed or it's recorded. When it's recorded at the public records, then it gets a date and time. So the first date was when the land became part of the county. The second one now is a mortgage. So the mortgage is the second lien, but many people will say that's the first lien on the property. Well, no, it's not. It's actually the second lien on the property in every property in the United States. It's the first loan on the property. It's the first loan, not the first lien. All right, so there's where that confusion comes in. All right, so Farmer Brown, he has this nice property. He gets married to a beautiful woman, has some children, and he raises his crops. And he keeps doing that year after year. As he gets money from his crop that he sells, he pays the bank on the mortgage. So everybody's happy. Well, everybody's happy until something goes wrong. So what can go wrong? Well, sometimes there's hurricanes. Sometimes there's windstorms. Sometimes there's floods. All right, so Farmer Brown, he keeps doing his business, and then suddenly there's a big storm. The big storm creates ice and snow and slush, and it ruins his whole crop. Oh, my goodness. So now his crop is ruined. He's going to have to go up and clean up the mess. But All the other years he was making money, but he saved it up so he could handle this whole situation. However, he did not pay his income tax. Well, before 1900, they didn't even have income tax, so they didn't have to worry about it. So if it was after 1900, you're going to have to worry about it, because if you don't pay the income tax, what's going to happen? Well, the IRS is going to say, wait a minute, you haven't paid your tax. Well, the IRS knows the property will never leave. You might get in your truck and drive away, but no way is the property going to leave. So what's happened? Well, we had the first lien was the taxes. We still have the mortgage in place. And now the IRS comes along and files a lien. So that would be now the third lien on the property. And how was it determined that it was 3? It was determined date and time. So the property might be 50 years old and have an old tax number on it. And then 10 years later, maybe we put a mortgage on it. And now another 10 years, and we're putting an IRS lien on it. So which is the first lien? The first lien is when they originated the property. The second lien is when the mortgage, the lender or the bank lent money to build the property or the barn. All right, now what happens? Farmer Brown croaks with a heart attack. Well, his young wife, she said, oh my goodness, I don't want to run the farm. And so Mr. Nice Guy comes along with a nice new car and a new computer, and off they go. And they live happily ever after. They abandoned the farm. But his beautiful young daughter, what does she do? Well, what is she doing? She's a smart girl. She gets a scholarship to Vanderbilt and goes to law school or medical school. She abandons the farm. Well, the tax collector doesn't like either of those people. Why? Because no one's paying the taxes. All right, now let's take a step back. We have 3 liens on the property. What's the first lien? It was the property tax. Second lien was the mortgage. The third lien is the IRS. All right, but the property is in a county, and the county has to work with the tax collector, and the tax collector works for the treasurer. And the treasurer said, no money, send them a notice of default. So they send a notice, and they explain the consequence, but nobody answers. So they send another notice, nobody answers. So then they have a sheriff deliver a notice and say, we're going to confiscate the property. And they do. And when they confiscate a property, they're going to resell it for low dollars because they just want to get it back on the tax roll. So now, Mr. Savvy tax lien and tax deed investor, graduated Ted Thomas's class, of course. Now, he shows up and says, wow, here's opportunity. Where's the opportunity, you say? There's a lot of liens on this property. Well, just so you know, the property is now located, it's been built up all around it with gentlemen farmers. And they have nice new cars, nice new trucks. They have their pretty horses out there running around, a lot of white fences. And right in the middle of all this is Farmer Brown's little farm. And now it's going to tax auction. But nobody wants it. Why? Because number one, the taxes are $60,000 that are past due. Number two, it's got a $100,000 mortgage. And number three, the IRS lien, which was only $10,000 to start with, hasn't been paid for a decade, maybe more. So now it's no longer $10,000, it's more like $50,000 or $60,000. Too many loans, nobody wants it. But Mr. Savvy tax lien investor and tax deed investor looks at the deal and said, Ted, is this a good deal? I said, no, it's a great deal. Oh my goodness, how can this be a great deal? Well, it is a great deal. So he heads over to the auction, and what does he do? Well, he realizes that if you go to a tax auction and you buy from the tax collector, any junior lien, junior in date and time, not in status, but date and time, will be wiped out. Well, date and time means they're going to foreclose on the tax lien. All the tax collector worries about is his own lien, because the mortgage lien will be wiped out. It will be excluded from the property tax record. And the IRS, they will be pushed into position, but the IRS makes no move for 120 days. So what does my friend do? He heads over there and buys the property for minimum $60,000. All right, he invested $60,000. That immediately wiped out a $100,000 mortgage. And because his coach made him read the rules, he read the rules, and it said, if the IRS wants the property, within 120 days, they have to come in and pay you whatever you paid for the property and plus interest. Now, let me say that again. If the IRS wants the property, they have to come and pay you back all your money that you invested plus interest. So what was his risk? He had zero risk because he knew what to do. He bought the property. 120 days later, the IRS still had not shown up. 150 days later, they hadn't shown up. So now he has a property that's been unmaintained for years because everybody abandoned. And so what is he going to do? Well, he bulldozes the house. He bulldozes the barn. Then he puts it up to sale to all those gentlemen farmers. You see, my rule in real estate is this. Don't buy the real estate. Buy the neighborhood. You can fix the real estate. You can't fix the neighborhood. And the neighborhood was all gentlemen farmers. So a $400,000 property was sold to another gentleman farmer for $300,000, but only a $60,000 investment was made. So what's the key to all this? The key to all this was understanding the lien law. And the lien law is so simple. Liens are determined by date and time. So in the classroom, he learned that, but he also learned to do your homework. And by doing his homework, what did he do? He discovered the IRS doesn't want property, the IRS wants money. So why would the IRS put up money to buy this property? Well, they could if they wanted to, but they rarely come forward unless they're multi-million-dollar properties. His worst case was if the IRS did come forward, he would get back all his money. So today, you have learned how to have a competitive advantage. My name is Ted Thomas.